On November 6, 2012, the voters of Washington State passed Initiative 502, which legalized the recreational use of marijuana. It is now legal in Washington for people aged 21 and older to possess up to 1 ounce of dried marijuana or up to 1 pound of a THC-infused solid product or 72 ounces of THC-infused liquid. Possession of marijuana-related drug paraphernalia is no longer a crime. The new law establishes a THC limit for drivers. Drivers who have 5 nanograms per milliliter of blood of the psychoactive ingredient in marijuana, THC, within 2 hours of driving or being in control of a vehicle are now DUI. The Washington Liquor Control Board, or LCB, a state agency tasked with regulating alcohol sales, was given responsibility to set up a regulatory system governing the growing, processing, distribution, and sale of recreational marijuana. Opinions differ about this epic social change, but there's one aspect of the issue where there is agreement. No one wants an increase in traffic deaths or injuries caused by marijuana-impaired driving. People often ask about the effect marijuana has on a person's ability to drive. Conducting research has been difficult because marijuana has been illegal, and more research is needed. But this we do know. Marijuana affects a person's spatial perceptions, that is, their ability to perceive objects, as well as a person's ability to maintain concentration and reaction times, all very important for driving. It also affects muscle behavior, cognition or thinking, memory, learning, the appetite, think marijuana munchies, and body temperature. Some research has shown residual effects on divided attention tasks and selective attention, our ability to screen out irrelevant information. People who get high on marijuana, as we've seen from toxicology studies of drivers who died in crashes while impaired, often don't just smoke marijuana, they combine marijuana with alcohol. The combination of marijuana and alcohol creates a synergistic effect. Here, 2 plus 2 doesn't necessarily equal 4. The combination makes a person much more psychologically impaired than either one would alone. THC, or delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, is the active ingredient in marijuana. Unlike alcohol, THC stays in a person's fat cells long after a person has smoked marijuana. However, blood level tests exist that can pinpoint active THC in the blood in the hours immediately after marijuana use. Some people argue that giving a person a DUI for driving while high is unfair because marijuana stays in the fat cells for weeks. However, active THC, called delta-9 THC, is not in the person's blood sample when they are no longer experiencing the psychological high from marijuana use. And the law that legalized marijuana set a standard for drivers. Just like the .08 blood alcohol concentration limit for drinking drivers, marijuana users who have more than 5 nanograms of THC per milliliter of blood in their system when arrested are legally DUI. Now, a driver under the age of 21 cannot have any THC in their blood at all within 2 hours of driving, or they could be issued a DUI. Police do not have to prove that their driving was affected. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration research says blood plasma levels drop below the new legal Washington threshold, usually about 3 hours after a person has smoked marijuana. But that all depends on the THC level of the marijuana, the person's age, physical condition, gender, use patterns, many factors. For this reason, we advise people, if you're using marijuana, use a designated driver. Over the years, marijuana growers have found ways to grow pot that is much more potent, has higher levels of THC than the marijuana of the early 70s. The average THC level of marijuana confiscated by the Drug Enforcement Administration in 1973 had less than 1% THC. Today's marijuana has between 20 and 30% THC, much more potent and more likely to result in addiction, especially for youth. Most marijuana users smoke marijuana, but some people eat it, as in marijuana brownies, lollipops, soda, and candy. People who use marijuana edibles need to be very careful that children don't get a hold of these products. A person who eats marijuana comes onto the experience of getting altered much more slowly than a person who smokes pot, because the marijuana has to pass through the digestive system and be metabolized. When you eat marijuana, the high lasts longer and is much more unpredictable. So a special note of extra caution here for drivers. You don't want to be coming on to marijuana that you've eaten while you're driving. If you consume marijuana, don't drive at all. The THC in marijuana can break through the blood-brain barrier and attach itself to cannabinoid receptors in a person's brain. Research shows marijuana use can damage brain development in young people, and for this reason, like alcohol, marijuana use is more likely to result in addiction for a young person. So what does a person look like who's high on marijuana? Well, you'll see red eyes, or eyes that are puffy and more bloodshot, dry mouth and throat, increased appetite, increased heart rate. In fact, police have reported heart rates of up to 160 beats per minute in some cases, where normal is between 70 and 100 beats per minute. Marijuana has a distinct smell, like tobacco has a distinct smell, and you can sometimes find marijuana debris in the mouth of the user and a green coating on their tongue. People who are high on marijuana have relaxed inhibitions. In Washington state, impaired drivers are a factor in close to half of all traffic deaths and more than 20% of all serious injury crashes. Between 2009 and 2013, there were over 1,000 people who lost their lives in impaired driving crashes. That's enough to fill 3 jumbo jets. Will the legalization of recreational marijuana undermine the progress that has been made to reduce impaired driving deaths and serious injuries in Washington? Will legalizing pot lead to an increased loss of life, an increase in collisions that result in severe, life-altering injuries? The answer to all of this depends on all of us.